Good afternoon, everybody. This is Sean with Soldarius Valor. Today with us we have Shar and Tyler and Tig and Stacy. The topic for today's podcast is going to be the government shutdown that's going on right now, how it's affecting our military, our veterans, and our first responders and our civil servants. So I know that for us, it's our daughters and their husbands who are Army and Marine Corps. They're being affected right now. Like my second to oldest daughter, her husband, who's a Marine recruiter, hasn't received their checks yet, and they're hoping that they get it, by the 15th of next month, the 19th at the latest. If not, I don't know what they're going to do because their children's doctor's appointments are being canceled. Their therapy appointments are being canceled. We're helping them as much as we can with groceries and stuff for right now. It's just really fucking them all around, just all the way around. And it's fucked up because it's not just, the American citizens that are falling for it or they're getting hurt by it. It's also, those that are serving us. And it's something's got to happen, man. Our government's got to pull their head out of their asses and get back to it. So, Tyler, with you being active duty, I'm going to hand it off to you.
So, I know from me being here in Germany, we haven't had much of an impact. I know that there's been briefs with our command teams and stuff like that about resources that we have. What I have been hearing across the network is that there's been some soldiers not getting paid. Like if they're on a recruiting status and stuff like that. Some of them didn't get paid on the 15th like I did. There's also been some news articles coming around from Germany itself that they're willing to pick up the slack and pay for the soldiers that are here in Germany, which is a great thing because that's another allied nation wanting to step in and help us out because they have the support they have respect for the troops and stuff like that. At the end of the day, whenever you stop and look about it, about the parties wanting to have this conflict of interest because of this bill that's going on through the Congress. They can't seem to get meeting in the middle or anything else like that. And it's causing a lot of chaos and a lot of families are impacted. The other opinion, my opinion I have anyway, and I'm not going to go into politics of it, but it does seem like the government does really like to use the troops as a bargaining chip to get what they want. I'm not sure if any other service members out there feel the same way. But what I do know is that if that is the case, you're messing with people's livelihoods and lifestyles and that are being severely impacted. I know I've heard from a few people that have been stationed around the world and their families are going to food banks just to make ends meet. And these are military member families, service members' families that are going to these places, like their spouses are going there. And granted, we may not make a whole lot of money, but we do make enough to survive and be able to keep on doing what we're doing and enjoy our lives that we have. So when you start messing with people's paychecks, you're messing with their whole life. Like if they don't get bills paid, who's going to pick up that slack? We're still expected to go to work. A lot of the federal employees, they're sitting on furlough orders and they're not getting paid. However, the downside is with the military, even though we are federal employees, we're still expected to go to work no matter what. We can't go under a furlough status, and it's really affecting a lot of people's mental health. A lot of people are stressed out. It's making for different aspects of the work environment. And, I get asked by lots of soldiers, like, what am I going to do if I don't get paid? Well, and the best answer I can give them is, well, talk to your banks, see who you bank with, start looking at stuff, start making plans, and start basically living like you poor because that's the only good advice I can give them. You got to watch every penny you make. And that's why a lot of people have switched over to like doing live streams and stuff like just to make a couple extra bucks that they make. And, and eventually if it keeps going like this, it's just going to impact them so hard that they're going to do things outside the box that will be questionable, and you're going to cause riffraff, and there's going to be emotions in a high status. there's going to be hate across the across the whole formations and stuff like that. It's going to be a very bad impact. And when I know a couple of years or quite a few years ago, I was asked by a politician about how they supported the troops, and I kind of chuckled, and I was like, "Well, you guys don't really support us, because the first time you guys talking money, the only thing you look at is, or the first thing you want to take away is our paychecks, because you feel like you're paying us too much. Well, how much does national defense security cost to the United States government? How much is it really worth? I got the military to stay in operation is going to cost money. But the stuff that we do and the stuff that we go through, do you really expect us to do that shit for free? I wouldn't expect anybody to do what I do in the military for free. Being away from your families, being away from friends and missing things like, Christmas, birthdays, graduations, weddings. We're missing out on all those memories that we could have had just to be overseas somewhere fighting somebody else's conflict. So that's pretty much my 2 cents in on it. And I think a lot of people need to realize that people's jobs are not a bargaining chip. And this is not just military, but anybody's job that's being impacted by this whole government shutdown. It should not be a bargaining chip to get what you want. Not everybody's going to get what they want. So you got to find some common ground to get in through with that. I'll leave it open to whoever wants to take up the next portion.
Shar, you got any input on this that you want to throw in on it? Being that you were married into the military at one point, and you're essentially what we would call a military brat growing up. But I mean, it's affecting everybody everywhere. So if you got anything that you want to say about it, we'd love to hear it from you as well.
Well, as a military brat, I think the last government shutdown that really impacted the military as much as it is now, I was when my stepfather was stationed in Vance Air Force Base in Enid, Oklahoma. There was a huge shutdown, and the military were not getting paid at all. And there was a store called Woolworths. Say that 3 times. And they were accepting paychecks, not paychecks, they were accepting checks from military families, allowing them to come in and buy the essentials. And then they would hold on to those checks until those folks started getting paid again. I know as a family, we were impacted by that. Never went through it as a spouse. But I know doing my own research, I read where this last paycheck that the military did get was basically because the Pentagon set aside $8 billion of their funds to make sure that the military got paid. Now, what does that mean moving forward? It means that the first pay date that could be affected for all branches could be the one coming up on this Friday. Paychecks might start getting delayed. I know that this is causing a lot of stress, because they're expected to, like Tyler said, they're expected to continue working. Even reserve personnel that are on federal duty, they're required to continue their duties. The National Guard, unless they're considered essential for national security, disaster response, or pre-deployment, they're basically furloughed. Healthcare services. Other than emergencies and urgent care, a lot of the military treatment facilities, they're not going to be treating patients. The only good thing is that the TRICARE through the military is they can go to private facilities, but that doesn't mean that they don't have to pay to go to those private facilities. Um, I know that the Navy Federal Credit Union and USA are offering zero interest loans or paycheck assistance programs to help members out. I know that the VA is, um, even without, they're not getting paid, but they're expected to continue working. There's a group called the Blue Star Families that's connecting military families to food pantries, like we talked about, or other critical support services. But the question also becomes: is when does this trickle into the public sector? The what are they called? It's the Federal Reserve said like a 0.1 to 0.02. I'd have to look it up again. My apologies. Percent. Basically, what's going to happen if we're headed towards another depression? What happens then? Because then it becomes those of us that work in the public sector, are our jobs safe? Yeah, I work for an international company, but what if my company decides to start doing layoffs because they can't afford to pay us? And so it becomes more than, yeah, who's being really impacted right now? The military, yes. But of course, what I worry about is also how it's going to impact the rest of us. And that's my 2 cents.
Thank you for that insight, Shar. Yeah, I mean it's getting hell on everybody. I've got Stacy here sitting here with me. She's gonna tell you a little bit more what she and her daughter have talked about. And her daughter is the daughter that I'm talking about is the one that's married to the Marine. So here's Stacy.
Hi, everyone. So, I know with, that 8 million that was donated so that they could pay some of our military. I know that they've had another donation made. I want to say it was around 100 million roughly. So hopefully they'll get their checks on the 1st or 15th, whenever they get it. But what gets me is, our military, they don't have the choice to go work anywhere else. If they don't show up because they're not getting paid, that's basically, they'll basically be considered AWOL and can go to prison for that. And their families are really suffering. There are families now that, had they had not gotten that check on the 15th, which luckily they did, they would have been served an eviction notice. And now they're in the same boat for next month because they don't know if they're going to have a check. And there are several families, military families out there who have children who need, life-saving, medical equipment or medicine that they're not able to get because with the shutdown, TRICARE has shut down. My grandson, who is, hard of hearing and more than likely on the spectrum and highly allergic to several different things, he's got to do occupational therapy and speech therapy, and they're not able to do it because they've shut TRICARE down. My daughter's supposed to be tested for, cancer and have a few other tests done that they've had to cancel that because TRICARE is shut down. And just to get the therapy sessions for her son is going to cost her over $700 a month that they don't have because she's a stay-at-home mom taking care of, the home front while he goes and does his recruiting. So he's hardly ever home. So they're living just off of his income. And they're looking at possibly, if they don't get a check, that they're going to lose their home as well. There are very few military affiliated banks who are doing kind of like, what is it called? Like a paycheck advancement loans. But even like USAA and Navy Fed, they will do a hard credit check, and they're turning down most military rather than giving them that helping hand to help them get by so they don't end up homeless or having to go to the food banks, and they can still feed their family and get whatever medical they can afford to get done. And then, of course, even outside of the military, you've got EBT getting shut off, which there's a lot of elderly that are on fixed incomes that depend on that so they can eat, that are going to be without. And me personally, I just feel it's absolutely ridiculous to literally use people's lives as a bargaining chip just to get your way, which is what our government is doing right now, in my opinion. And it's ridiculous that they are willing to go that far rather than grow up, be adults, and have those conversations with an open mind rather than, I'm going to pitch a 2-year-old fit if you don't give me what I want. That's just my opinion, but that's how it definitely comes across to me. And I think it's sad. And our elderly, our military, our first responders, their families deserve better than that. And I will leave the floor open to anybody else.
Thanks for that, Stacy. So, our next one that we haven't heard from yet is Miss Tig. She's up in Canada right now. Tig, how is this affecting, possibly our military members that may be up in Canada training with the Canadian military? Have you heard anything about that, or is it even affecting y'all at all?
Honestly, we don't even hear about this stuff much up here right now. Like, our news is honestly it's all Donald Trump's fault. Everything is Donald Trump's fault. And we have so many issues up here that, like, our military is very small compared to what it used to be. It's underfunded. Our veterans, majority of them, a lot of them are struggling and suffering in silence. But our news is so skewed right now. So all they basically say is, Trump bad, it's all Trump's fault. That's so... when I did my own digging and looking into it, and as a Canadian, there's a lot of things I don't like that Trump's done, said, whatever. At the same time, I do see all the good that his government has done so far for America and Americans. And you can't deny the facts and the statistics of what's going on and what's happening. And when you need so many Democratic votes to keep the government open and running, and they're refusing to do that just based on facts that they don't like certain things, instead of working with the other side of the government, like, the hate and vitriol they have seems to far outweigh their ability to even be willing to work together for the people. And it's no better up here. Like, I'm not throwing stones, because, like, our government refuses to listen to us. And like I said, it's just a whole chaotic mess up here on a whole other level. But it's just so askewed in the media up here. And you try to talk to anybody or show them stuff, and they just get angry. And it's just, oh, it's Trump's fault. It's Trump's fault. It's like, no, a lot of our politicians up here are idiots. Like, why don't you blame and call out the people whose fault it is? I don't care what side of the aisle they're on. Like, I don't care who people voted for or what side of the aisle you're on. Like, if you're not willing to work together, then you shouldn't be in government, period. That's my take on it. It's okay. That's the beauty of Canada and the United States. Like, in all honesty, our governments were founded on being able to disagree across the aisle, but come to a commonality for the people. They're not doing that anymore. Because from what I'm seeing, one side wants to throw a temper tantrum, like Stacey said, while the other side is calling them out on stuff and they don't like it. So they're trying to censor them and shut them up. And it's insane. It's ridiculous. And then you see people hating people on just everyday people. We're all getting screwed exactly the same. And that's exactly what the people in power want. Because if they can keep us divided, then we're not going to work together to fight for what's right for our countries and what our forefathers fought for and are still continuing out there fighting for, and even helping other nations fight their wars. But at the end of the day, we've got to take care of our own countries first and then work together. Like Canada and the US have always worked together. And because of some of the stupid things and just the bickering back and forth and childishness, like, I'm sorry, they need to put their rulers away and start working together. Like, and I'm not blaming one over the other, because they're both nations' governments are being pathetically childish at this point. I don't know. That's my take on it.
Thank you for that, Tig. Yeah, I went to the store yesterday to grab some drinks and stuff, and as I was getting in the car to leave, I saw a gentleman sitting there smoking a cigarette outside the store, and he was wearing a t-shirt that said DD214 Club on it. So I got out of the car and walked back over and introduced myself and talked to him for a minute. He's a Navy veteran, but he's having to live in a nursing home right now, for which we've got a veterans nursing home here. It's the Texas veterans home that he's living at. He's a Navy, like I said, he's a Navy veteran. And we talked a little bit about, our pasts and stuff like that. And I had told him that, or had asked him, how is he being affected by this government shutdown? And he said that if he's not able to get his checks, he's not sure if the home will be able to continue providing the medical care that he needs for his rehabilitation for his leg due to diabetic complications. So he's worried about that. He and his wife are separated right now, and I'm not real sure due to why. I didn't ask. It's none of my business. She's in another state and he's here in Texas, and he was kind of worried that, even though they're separated, that the benefits he's receiving and that she's receiving for being a spouse are going to cease to exist for her as well. So I mean, he's not only got the stress of his own issues going on with him due to his own medical, but he's got the stress of his spouse as well, and wondering how she's going to continue to be cared for, because he had mentioned that she's got some medical complications as well, that without his benefits from the military are going to greatly impact her health and her survival as well. So, I mean, it's not just, our active duty that's being affected by this, the shutdown. It's everybody as a country as a whole, worldwide, wherever our American citizens are that are affected by this. I'm on the VA website, and they're stating things that are not being impacted on as far as on them. The VA medical centers, their outpatient clinics, their vet centers are going to continue operations as usual. Their benefits are continuing and are being processed, including compensation, pension, education, housing. Their burials will continue at the VA cemeteries. Applications for headstones, markers, and burial benefits are also continuing. The Board of Veterans Appeals are continuing to make decisions on veterans' cases. So if you're needing help, they do have call centers. Their primary call center. You can reach them via 1-800-MY-VA-411. We've also, the Veteran Crisis Lines is dial 988 and press 1. That's also the same number for the National Suicide Prevention Hotline. The VA Benefit Hotline, which is 1-800-827-1000, is available Monday through Friday, Eastern Standard Time from 8 a.m. to 9 p.m. The VA National Cemetery Scheduling Office, which is 1-800-535-1117 or TTY 711, is available Monday through Friday from 8 a.m. to 7:30 Eastern Time, and Saturdays from 9 a.m. to 5:30 p.m. Central Time to schedule burials. The VA Suicide Prevention Programs, Homeless Services, and Caregiver Support is also continuing. Now, the things that are being impacted, and as I was reading over some of this, kind of seemed a little contradictory, saying that the VA will cease providing transition program assistance and career counseling. Their call centers for the VA's GI Bill and hotline, memorial product applicant assistance, is closed until the shutdown is done. The VA benefits regional offices are closed. Public affairs and unfunded outreach to veterans will cease. Their social media, vet resources, emails, and responses to press inquiries are shut down. Not like this really affects much of us, but it does for those who have lost them. Cemetery maintenance and placement of permanent headstones at the VA cemeteries, those services have stopped until the shutdown is done. The applications for pre-need burial at VA cemeteries are not being processed. There will be no printing of new presidential memorial certificates until the shutdown is done. There is no outreach to state, county, tribal, municipal, faith-based, or community-based partners by the VA central office. So all of those that they're outreaching to help out and all that outreach and assistance from the VA is being shut down until all this is done and over with. And this is all just off the VA website. So, I mean, our first responders, what federal funding they're receiving has either been greatly reduced or has been completely shut down. So if we've got, firefighters or police or EMS that receive, on-the-job injuries, that their department or their municipality have to pay for their medical service or their recovery or their burial assistance to the families, that's government funded, they're not going to be able to receive that help either. I mean, so yeah, it's everybody, when they do government shutdowns, everybody immediately thinks it's the military that's being affected. No, it's everybody. It's like Stacy said, those that are on EBT, those that are receiving governmental financial assistance just so they can live their day-to-day lives and get the necessary medication, they're being affected. I mean, we as a country have elected to put these people in office, and again, like Stacy said, they're using all of this. We are their pawns of leverage to get what they want because they feel the need that they're being mistreated for some reason, even though we're the ones that are, maybe making it paycheck to paycheck every week or every month. Some of those that already had reduced amounts in their benefits are, they're reduced again or not even getting it at all. So I know Stacy had mentioned that, like our daughter, if her husband doesn't get paid, they're looking at an eviction. Our grandson cannot receive the medical treatment that he needs and requires, so that way he can, live a comfortable life for what he can live it for his age. I mean, and our granddaughter, she's affected by it because she never gets to see daddy because he's having to put in more work because some of the people that are affected by this are just like, well, if I'm not getting paid, I'm not going in. Well, guess what, bud? You signed a contract. Even if you don't show up for work and if you miss too much without, plausible reasoning for it, you're going to be AWOL. And guess what? You're really not going to be able to do your family any good when you're locked up. And then, depending on the case of it all, you're looking at a dishonorable discharge, which means you lose all benefits, your family included. So, I mean, we as citizens of this nation need to put our differences aside and come together as a nation like we did when September 11th happened in 2001. Everybody put their political differences aside, and for once, America was great again in that moment, in its time of need like that. And this is starting to become a yearly thing with the shutdowns. And it's all for what? What's it for? So that way those in power and in charge can whine and cry to get more money and get their way instead of just working together to figure this out, how to further advance our country and actually make it better for our citizens. I mean, they're still getting paid. So if the way I see it is, if they're going to do a government shutdown, then any government employee should not be getting paid. And if those in power want to get paid, then they need to continue paying everybody else as well. Their full wages. There's no reason for this shutdown. None whatsoever, other than for people to throw temper tantrums that claim to be adults. I don't know. That's just more of my input on it as I was looking at stuff. Whoever else wants to add to this, feel free. The floor is open to y'all.
So, I know up in Canada things are run differently, but down there, and I know not everybody is necessarily comfortable going to like their local legion, churches, or not for profits. There's a lot of stigma behind a lot of those things, but I'm just wondering if there's any way that we can, like, I know we have a massive list of not for profits and stuff like that, as well as legion contacts and stuff. But I know, regardless of people's beliefs or anything like that, local churches are usually always there to help those in need. I'm not sure about going on, like contacting them and reaching out and stuff like that. But I mean, that's kind of part of what they're there for, right? Like, again, I know not everybody is comfortable with reaching out for help and stuff like that, but sorry, that's my dog. I don't know. What do you guys think? I mean, we can compile a list or reach out to different churches across the US and stuff like that and see maybe what they're able to do to help and start speaking out against it maybe and donating to help those in need with still being anonymous.
Well, and that's where a lot of organizations, just in general, with the whole government shutdown in general, right? There's a lot of organizations ready and willing to help the military. Like we have the AER program, which I know there was a lot of talk about that for the active duty service members, or even the National Guardsmen, they can use that. However, the issue with that being is the fact that the AER is funded by the troops, by the donations. It's strictly donation based, just to get like essential stuff. But again, at the end of the day, outside of the political realm, we all got to take care of each other. And just like Sean said, we all need to come together like we did in 9/11. But the unfortunate side and the reality of it is, and this is again my opinion, look at today's society, how far divided we are, because we've got people just having too much of their own opinion and not willing to listen to others. They're tunnel focused and tunnel visioned in their own perspective. And they're not willing to listen to everybody's side. They're not willing to take and have that logical debate or political debate, or wanting to listen to everybody's opinions and wanting to capitalize on that. They just want to do them and be done. And that's dangerous in its own, because then you got a bunch of people that just think for themselves and don't want to help each other out to build a better nation or a better community in general. They just want to do their own thing and be like, well, I don't care about you. You're not sitting at my table. I don't need to worry about you. And that's just the unfortunate side of society as a construct. It's just one of those things.
Yeah, I remember the day where you knew your neighbors. You went outside and you knew everybody in your neighborhood. And everybody worked together and helped each other out. And yeah, that does still exist to an extent, but it's not what it used to be. And honestly, it's sad. And I get that a lot of people are speaking out. There's a lot of people that are afraid to speak out and don't want to risk people not liking what they have to say, or legal repercussions in certain countries. And it's sad, honestly, because it's like people are either so gung-ho on one side or the other, and so many of the level-headed people are just watching both sides destroy each other instead of speaking out themselves. And honestly, it's sad, because you do see people butting heads when they're coming from extremes on one side or the other. But when we stop having these conversations, like regardless of agreeing on everything or not, like all of us in here, we don't agree on everything, but we still love each other. We still hold each other accountable. But that's what actually being a true friend or being real is. You tell each other the truth, even when it hurts and it sucks and it's brutal, and you help them through it. And you communicate, and sometimes you agree to disagree. But it seems that nowadays, so many people just don't want to do that. It's, you have to see things my way or else. And I don't know why that even started to be a thing. Like, it's okay to be offended. It's okay for people to not like you, and for you to not fit in with everybody, and for you to lose and not get picked all the time, and for people to say no. That's life. And it seems that people have forgotten that. It's just sad.
agree with everything that's been said so far. I mean, it is very sad when, society today as a whole has become a me society instead of an us society. There's, like Tig was saying, there's a time in history when our neighbors were just as close as our siblings, to us. It's families did things together. Now it's like the only time a family does something together with other families that aren't, family by blood or marriage is, like major celebrations, like 4th of July celebrations in the town. It's everybody coming out for one purpose, but yet they're still there for their own individual purposes. They're not, you might have, an acquaintance type run in with another family, or you might have a small group of friends that come together, but it's not like it used to be. I know my mom was growing up saying that the neighborhood that she grew up in, it's like they would essentially have, like block celebrations or community celebrations for the area that she was living in. You'd have dads out in the front yard with the grills, grilling hot dogs and hamburgers and stuff. And everybody was welcomed to eat at each other's table. It's not like that anymore. And it's sad that we have become so fast paced and so fast moving that we have gotten away from the inclusion of everybody in the community to now being segregated, essentially. And that trickles. It doesn't just trickle down from the top. It runs the gauntlet, runs the ladder back up to the top. And those that are in power are the ones essentially that are creating it by keeping that division there. Like Tig said, we have all become so divided that, hell, even within our own families, we don't know what each other's doing half the time. And in my opinion, we need to get back to, get away from that, oh, it's me, 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 type attitude, and get back into, okay, yes, I can benefit from this, but at the same time, how can I help those around me benefit as well? And we've gotten away from what we originally were as a country just due to political beliefs. I mean, I've seen people who have been best friends for years be divided over political belief. Families have been divided over political beliefs, just like they were back during the Civil War. Brother against brother, father against son, cousin against cousin, all over beliefs. And, like Tig said, we are all entitled to our own beliefs. But at the end of the day, we all still have to live here together. What's the point of, calling yourself family or calling people friends if you're not actually going to be there to help each other out? We've got to come together as a country and start getting this back under control. We have given power to the government for way too long. And we're all affected by it. Not just in the United States, but everybody that the United States deals with as well. Like Canada, it's hurt. There's political separations that have hurt the relationship between the U.S. and Canada. There's stuff that's hurt the relationship between us and our allies, all over political beliefs because somebody doesn't like what somebody else is saying. This shutdown, it's not just affecting, like I said before, it's not just affecting those of us here at home. It's affecting us worldwide. Maybe not so much in other countries where our soldiers or our citizens are, as much as it is here here at home. But it's still affecting them. I'm sure that, with the military cuts, as far as the military budget goes, they're feeling it there on other countries and our other bases. Like Tyler's in Germany. He said that he hadn't heard much about it or hasn't really affected them much, but I'm sure that there's been cuts and effects somewhere along the line that has affected the base that he's stationed at in some fashion or in some, scope of the financial support. And then just the backing from the citizens as well towards our military and our first responder personnel. Like, look what happened when everything was going on up in Portland, Oregon. And it's still going on in Portland, Oregon. You still have riots going on in California and in other states. There's, protests that are going on because of this. And everybody's got their own agenda as to why they're doing it, and they're all trying to push them, and it's not getting anybody anywhere. It's like individual agendas or small group agendas, and the only thing it's doing is hurting the country. So like I said before, we need to come back together as a country, take control of our government, quit putting these self-centered politicians in power, so that way these government shutdowns stop happening. Because in the end, you're just hurting your own country. You're hurting your neighbor. You're hurting your brother, your sister, your mom, your dad, your cousin. And it's just bullshit. It needs to stop. Doesn't matter what your political belief is. Doesn't matter what your political or religious background is. It doesn't matter. We all live in this country together. We all need to come together as a country and stop letting all these social divides keep us segregated like they're doing. I don't know. It just needs to stop.
I agree 100%. It's sad, like you said, like we got neighbors hating neighbors, Americans hating Canadians, Canadians hating Americans, and there's really no reason why. There is no reason for it. We've always been allies. And just because our governments aren't working together right now, and I will fully blame parts of the Canadian government for that one, because it's 100% on them. Unfortunately, it is what it is. That's the truth at the end of the day. What's going on is 100% their fault. But it's not on the everyday Canadian. And that's what sucks. It seems to kind of be brushing over onto the everyday Canadian. And then there's backlash towards Americans when it's not even valid.
Oh.
I'm just going to say it right now. It's not valid. Like, people who are that angry against Americans in America, in Canada, need to take a good look at themselves and then take a good look at what's going on here in Canada and actually do digging, do your research. Don't just watch the news up here, because honestly, you're not even getting the stories. Like, you're not getting the information of what's really going on, both down in the US as well as in our government up here. I encourage people to watch CPAC and watch Question Period and actually look on the Government of Canada's website and do your own research on the politicians, and you're going to go down a rabbit hole. You are. There's a lot of things there. But at least do that before you attempt to come to a conclusion. Because at the end of the day, America needs to do what's best for America, but Canada needs to do what's best for Canada. We all need to take care of our own citizens first. Overfill our own cups so then we can overflow and help others. Because we've got so many people in the US and so many people in Canada, veterans, first responders, and just everyday civilians that are suffering and struggling. One, because of the lack of community anymore. And two, because the governments have run amok at this point and certain people refuse to work with others or are just completely fumbling the ball. Whether it be purposefully for monetary gain or power, or because they're following the leader. Whatever their reasoning, it's got to stop. They've got to be willing to work with the other side. And honestly, with the Canadian government today, I don't see that happening very well because of the way our government has behaved. Both the Ontario government and the federal government. They're not working for, and there's multiple other provinces too, but I personally am in Ontario. Alberta government, they're, in my opinion, they're doing pretty darn good. I don't agree with separation, but I do think that they shouldn't be, the federal government shouldn't be imposing the way they are on any province. And that's the problem, is that the federal government is trying to impose all of these crazy rules and regulations and laws, and they're trying to strip Canadians of their rights, law-abiding citizens. That's what's going on up here. One by one, little by little, the Liberals are trying to pass bills up here to squash our rights. And regardless of the video that Doug Ford put out being factual or fictional, I don't think that was a mature thing to do on his part at all. Like, that was a waste of our tax dollars, for one, and for two, why would you try and, like, you're a government official, quit. Just, why would you even attempt that is my thing. Like, I'm just sick of all the threats from both governments to each other and just being petty and childish. We got enough of our own issues up here, and there was no need for any of that.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with it all. There's no need or any call for any of it. I think we've gotten a little off topic here. Back to the government shutdown. I mean, I've seen on the news lately that due to this shutdown, there's schools that are having to shut down because they're not receiving that federal grant funding to help keep them in operation. You know, some of these schools, they depend on that government funding to stay in operation, like, so that way they can buy the food for their students, so that way they can feed their students breakfast and lunches, because the food that these students eat at school, sometimes that's the only meal they get to eat. And now with the government cutting their funding and shutting down, they're not getting to eat. When these schools shut down, then our children are essentially being neglected, and it's on a federal level. That's not by choice of the parents or by cause of the parents. That's by cause of the government. But ultimately, it's going to be the parents that pay for it because, for one, we're the ones with our children every day. We're the ones that have to figure out, okay, my child's not eating lunch at school. We don't have much at home to feed our children with. What are we going to do? And that all goes back to, you know, there's people that are going to end up going homeless, having their utilities cut because they're having to decide, okay, do I put food in my children's mouths or do I pay the electric bill this month? So that way, you know, with these colder months, my children can stay warm. The schools are being, they're having their funding cut. I mean, it's ultimately, it's hurting our children as well. And our children are the future of this country, and our children are going to behave the ways that they learn at home. And there's some children that grow up, their parents don't give two flips about them. There's children that grow up that they get everything they want just because the parents don't want to deal with them, and because it's easier to give them what they want than tell them no. But in the end, our children are our future. Our children are going to continue these, I don't want to call them traditions, because I mean, granted, that's what it's become. Apparently, with the government shutdowns, is a tradition every year around this time that they shut down for whatever reason. And it's not just federal; it's on the state level too. I know here in Texas, the Democrats like to run out during times of voting to other states, so that way, they're like, well, if we're not there to vote, then they can't hold the vote. Well, eventually, we as citizens are going to get tired of it, and we're either going to fire your ass, or we're just going to go on and make it the way that we want it to be. We're going to take the power back and do it the way that we see fit to do it. And in the end, that's going to cause more chaos than it's going to solve, because it's going to create civil war again. And if not civil war, then definitely civil unrest. I mean, we're already in the beginning stages of it. If you just kick back and look, take your head out of the fishbowl and put it on the outside and look in. That's what we're doing right now. And like they had said earlier, people don't like reaching out. They've got that pride thing going on. There are organizations like churches and stuff that can help out, but even they're limited. Once all of their resources are expended, what then? We're going to be right back to like they were during the Great Depression. It's almost going to kind of, and if we don't watch it, we're going to end up like in a Mad Max situation. You're going to have your own little factions here and there, and they're all going to be fighting each other, and we're just going to lay ruin to our own country, and it's going to be our fault. It's not all just on the government. It's on us as the citizens as well, because we're the ones that voted to put these people in office. We are the ones that can vote to remove them. The power does not lie in the government 100%. The majority of the power does actually lie in the citizens of the country, believe it or not. So stop with your little me attitude and your little whiny hissy fits because things aren't going your way at the particular point in time, and look at the bigger picture. Look at where we're at as a whole. Look at where we need to go, where we want to go. Just because the government is there, they are elected officials. They can be removed just as easily as they were put in place. Now, I'm not calling for a governmental overthrow by any reason. No, that's not what I'm calling for. I'm just saying that instead of having that me attitude, put everybody in that boat with you, because we're all in that boat together. And it seems like everybody is drilling holes just as fast as the others are trying to plug them. And we're going down. The ship is going down fast, and it needs to stop. We need to start plugging holes and bailing water and quit drilling the holes. That's all there is to it.
Well, and one thing I'll say about Germany that has affected us, like a lot of our range control operations and stuff like that have been affected because these guys that are on federal contracts here aren't at work. So, I mean, like, we can't get into training areas sometimes or get areas reserved. Medical stuff is being affected as well because we can't get certain medications that we require either. And we do feel the impact over here too, even though we're being overseas, because like it's already been stated, TRICARE shut down, stuff like that. We can't get the stuff that we need for medications. There are certain services that are at limited capacity. At one point, they were talking about possibly shutting down the commissaries, which is the grocery stores on base. If they do that, I mean, we're going to have to go shop on the German economy, and then you fight the whole currency exchange rate. I mean, don't get me wrong, the grocery stores here are fairly decent on pricing and food and stuff like that, but it's still an out of the way expense that we shouldn't have to worry about suffering if we got on base grocery stores. And there's some soldiers that don't have cars here in Germany, so they can't make it off base unless they pay for a taxi. Well, now you're talking more money out of that soldier's pocket. They ain't going to get reimbursed for that stuff. So we do feel the impact a lot over here, and everybody's trying to band together or come together to to make sure the soldiers are taken care of, which is great. We are starting to come together as military goes. We're taking care of each other's families. We're supporting each other's families. A lot of NCOs and higher leadership have opened up their houses and said, "Hey, if you need anything, come by and get something." I know I've offered up to my soldiers, "Hey, you need a ride, you need something, let me know. I got you." And if one of my soldiers called me right now and says, "Hey, I didn't make it to the grocery store. Is there any way you can spot me some food?" Yeah, on my way. Let's go. Like there's one soldier, I always know when he's out of nicotine because he acts different. And I'll throw him my Zen can and say, "Here, take a pouch." It's just small things like that we tend to forget that we do need to help with each other. Something as simple as, "Hey, you need a drink, you need some food, you want to go get some lunch, let's go." And one thing I've noticed about society is we don't do that anymore. We don't look out for the needs of others. And I've never stood on the political sense. I'm not left, I'm not right. I kind of sit in the middle. I listen to both sides. I understand both sides. But at the end of the day, they just can't come together and work things out because they're more focused on just their personal apparatus and don't care about how others suffer or how it impacts others. They don't look at the larger picture, at least from my point of view. I don't think a lot of people look at the bigger picture. I think they get that tunnel vision and they just focus on what the issue is right then and there and be like, okay, one thought that should go into play. How's this going to affect the masses? How's this going to affect everybody else? Not just this group or that group specifically, but how's it going to affect everybody? Because at some point in time, what happens to one group, it's going to flow over and affect the other group during the government shutdown. It's just a hit and miss with everything in general. And as a nation, we should be standing up together and saying, "Hey, get this shit unfucked so we can get on with our lives and quit doing this." Like, money's money. I get it. And when you do financial analysis, you start looking at the bigger numbers and we're spending so much for this, we're spending so much for that. Okay, where are we going to start trimming the fat? What do we need to do to trim the fat? And it's just a big eyesore all the way around. But that's about all I really got to say about the whole government shutdown in general. So if anybody else has anything they would like to add, by all means, go for it.
I was just listening to some concerns and stuff. And I don't know what kind of things you guys have down there, if it even would be available right now from anybody with what's going on. But I know some places have like home heating grants and bill payment deferrals, as well as bill payment assistance. I just wasn't sure. I know most of that's like governmental. I wasn't sure if you guys knew of any that was like not for profit or not governmental.
Yeah, we've got one here in East Texas where we're at. It's called Camp V. They're mainly veteran oriented and driven, but they provide services to our veterans on a non-for-profit basis because that's what they are. But that's just here in East Texas. As far as any other organizations like that, I'm not really sure specifically by name or location, but I know that they are out there. I know there's a couple up in Oklahoma that are first responder and veteran driven in their missions that are there to help in the hard times, whether it be financial or physical or with mental anguish type stuff. They're out there. We've got a resource list that we as an organization have compiled, and we still add to it as we find new ones. But as far as specifically naming the organizations that are around here in Texas, Camp V is the first one I can think of right now that I know of. I know there's some first responder type organizations that are, first responder focused down around Austin. I know there's a couple in Dallas and some in Houston, so our major metropolitan areas. But right off the top of my head, I can't think of their names. It wouldn't take much research to figure out what they are either. As far as organizations that are hell bent, to help our veterans and our first responders, there's another one in Houston called TADSAW. It's an acronym. It's Train a Dog, Save a Warrior, and they are completely donation funded. They do not depend on our government for any of their assistance. And they've got, what they do is they train veterans and first responders that require service animals, mainly service dogs. And what they do is they take the profits from the paying customers to train their service dogs and put those profits towards the training of our veterans and our first responders and their service animals, because they get their training for free. The owner of the organization, I believe, is either a veteran himself or has several family members who are veterans, and which is why he started TADSAW, and he's based out of Houston. So what they'll do is they'll take and train the service animal and the veteran, so that way once, and because it's going to happen, we all know it will, the service animal passes away, that still leaves the veteran with the knowledge and the ability to train their next one without having to pay somebody to train a dog and then pair it to them. No, they want you to already have your chosen service animal. It has to go through a vetting stage to make sure the temperament and all that is good, and that their shots and stuff are up to record, because they have trainers that are nationwide that go to these people or hold small classes to help train them. But like I said, they're not government funded. They are all based off of donations and services paid for by those who are not veterans and stuff. So I guess you could say they're a semi for profit, but they take those profits and turn right around and put them back into the organization to training those, so that way our veterans and our first responders don't have to pay for those training sessions. I know there's an organization up in Oklahoma that does like equestrian type therapy. Again, they charge civilians for their services, so that way the veterans and the first responders that are choosing that kind of therapy don't have to pay for it out of pocket. So again, they're taking those funds and putting it right back into the organization. I mean, because let's face it, all organizations that are nonprofit and don't have governmental funding are kind of on a for-profit basis, but it's not so that way they can pay their individuals. It's so that way they can continue to run the organization, because any organization has to have financial support from somewhere somehow, and most of us receive it through donations. And those who actually have good intentions with it, if they do get a little bit of profit of it, okay, that's their organizational choice. But as long as the majority of it goes back into the organization and you're not having to depend on the federal government or the state government or county government to keep you afloat, that's all the better. But with this government shutdown, even those that are non-funded by the government are getting the hardship of it, because some of the outside services that they have to use, those services are funded by government shutdowns, or funded by the government, and they're affected by the shutdown, which in turn affects the other organization as well. So I don't know. It's just, we just need to do better. That's all I know. It's just, it's not fair to the American citizen that those who are in power are allowed to have this much power over the country because they're not getting their way. No, we're not all going to agree 100% on things. We're not all going to disagree 100% on things. You've got, like Tyler said, and like we've said, we've got to find that common ground. We've got to lose that tunnel vision. If we're going to have tunnel vision, let's have the tunnel vision over how the masses are going to, benefit from it and not hurt from it. Yeah, so the government shutdown just needs to stop. We don't need to have any more. And if it continues, then we, the people, need to take the power back and vote those out of the office that are continuing the process of shutting the government down for whatever reasons they see fit to do so, because we as a country still have to operate. We still have to live. The division needs to stop. We don't need a civil war. People think they want war. I'm a non-combat vet, but let me tell you, you don't want war. Nobody really wants it. It's just essentially, two big bullies on a block starting crap with each other, but getting the other people involved to fight their fights for them instead of going toe-to-toe with each other. Is essentially all it is. It's just playground bullshit, and it needs to stop. Because we're just hurting each other.
Is there anything else that anybody would like to add to this? I've said pretty much all I wanted to say about the government shutdown, so.
Yeah, pretty much said everything I can say about it, because we're just starting to, beat a dead horse right now with everything.
Yeah, I apologize. I didn't mean to get off topic there. At the end of the day, it's the citizens that suffer, and it just sucks. But I don't really have anything more to add. Unfortunately, I don't know. I can't experience it from an American's point of view because I'm up in Canada. It just breaks my heart for everybody because it's just not right.
Great. Shar, did you have anything you wanted to add before we close it out?
No, I've said what I've had to say. I think as the saga continues, I hate to call it a saga, but the powers that be have made it a saga. I think continues, we'll continue to follow up with it in future podcasts.
Everybody, well, it sounds like that's the end of our podcast for today. Again, I'm Sean. Today we had Shar and Tyler and Tig and Stacy with us. We were discussing the topic of the governmental shutdown. And those of us that were here, we are Soldarius Valor. We enjoyed this time with you, and remember, we've always got your six.